Now, one more important part on the D page is your data sources. So how are you getting the data? So yes, it is from the DB, agreed. Which DB it is? Is it other external application or your application? How are you retrieving it? Yes, here comes different options. So when it's a connector, it could be a REST, so any kind of connector, which means I'm getting the data from external applications. So we'll, anyways, once we start looking at integrations, we'll look at this part. Okay. Then I have a data transform. So generally, data transforms will not interact with the DB. Okay. It is activities that mostly interact with your databases. Okay. So, but still, if you are looking at a data transform for sourcing your D page, yes, we can use it. Then report definition. Earlier, for a single D page, you did not have report definition as a source. It is there only for a list D page. But now, even we got this report definition for a single instance as well. By default, it used to be a lookup. When you have to just get one instance, lookup is always the default option. Then you have robotic automation. You have activity. This is the important one. You have an activity. This is quite interesting. In a D page, you can refer an activity. And in an activity, you can refer a D page. So both are possible. So this is where through the activity, you will retrieve the data and you can share it across to your D page. Then I have robotic automations and desktop automations, where a bit of other integrations are also required. You need to have a bot, and that has to be connected to your desktop, and an integration between your Pega environment and the robot environment has to be established. And then this one is a interesting and new source, where I can have multiple sources at a time to retrieve my information. Okay? Probably I need to get data from different applications. So I can add in the sources. Okay? One could be through a connector, one could be through an activity, one could be a data transfer. So the order in which you define the sources will define the order in which the records are retrieved. Okay? So aggregate sources will bring data together. Okay? All of this data is put together on your D page. Okay? Along with this, we have another option where you can decide an alternate source. For example, if suppose let's take a connector is available to retrieve the information, but for whatsoever reason the application is down and the connector is not able to retrieve information for you, then I can use alternate sources. Okay? So if the service is up and running, I'll go for the source to be a connector. If not, I might use an activity. So this is either of the one. Only one source would be active at a given point of time. Okay? Because we have a when condition here. So if I add more, it becomes your otherwise when or else if. The first condition that is met will become the source. Okay, rest of them will not be involved. But for aggregate sources, all the data sources are involved. Okay? Every one that you list out will be involved. So that's about the data sources. And a very, very important aspect of the D pages is your refresh strategies. How often are you likely to refresh your D page? Okay. Because if a person accesses my application today, I shouldn't show him the D page that is, fetched last year. No, it has to be immediate. And again, that depends upon the type of application and the domain you are handling. So let's see refresh strategies. Because retrieving information is one thing, and how often do you refresh that data is also a very, very important aspect. because you cannot show the stale data to the user. Suppose you are working for a trading application related to stocks, investments, brokerages, and all. So the data has to be, it should almost be live data. Probably for every second or for every 10-15 seconds, you have to keep on showing the current data. Even couple of hours back data will also not work. So depending upon that, what kind of application are we dealing with, what data it is, how often the data is being modified. So looking at all those, we have to plan the refresh strategies. So there are 3 refresh strategies. First one is reload once per interaction. So here the D page is loaded once per interaction. The very first time you access the D page, it is refreshed. So more likely relating to your, the example could be IRCTC. When you first initially start your transaction, you see around 50 tickets are available. So that holds good until you end the transaction. Towards the end, you see only 25 are available. Okay? So until you reach the end of the transaction, you see that 50 would be available for you. Okay? So the refresh happens only at the beginning of your interaction. Then do not reload when this is a purely conditional base. If some condition is met, you don't need to reload the D page. Otherwise, it has to be reloaded. This is an entirely conditional based reload. And reload if older than.
1 minute. Do not reload
Yeah.
when it is based on when condition.
Correct. You can define the condition. If the condition is met, I am not reloading the D page. Okay. If the condition is false, only then it is reloaded.
Okay. Yes.
So maybe it could be related to some status flags or something. If a particular key or any kind of field, if it is set to false, then only I will reload it. Otherwise, I don't need to. Sort of that kind of scenario. So then reload a folder. Then this is also again a time bound reload. If my data is older than a certain period, I would like to reload it. Like for example, your gold rates and petrol rates, once they are decided, okay, probably like around 12 a.m. they are decided, the same rates will continue until the next day, correct? So for all the 24 hours, you will have the same gold rate and petrol rate, correct? So in those scenarios, I can choose one day as the time period, and if my data is older than one day, only then I would like to reload it. Otherwise, I don't need to. Just because it stays same throughout that 1 day period of time. Then things like your stocks, these trading and all. So for them, I might not use even minutes. They have to be in seconds. So my data has to be refreshed for every 2 seconds or every 1 second, could be. Depending upon the domain, the type of application, the frequency with which your data is modified, accordingly we will decide the refresh strategies.
So for reload if older than, if I give say 5 minutes,
Okay.
so and if the user wants to access the data, so for now at suppose 8 o'clock, 8:05 I want to refresh, and
Okay.
the user wants to access the data at 8 o'clock. So till 8
Okay.
to 8:05, he will see the same data.
Okay. Let me put it this way. I'll just add one thing here. So
Okay.
when you choose this reload a folder, then suppose I'll take this 2-hour scenario. Let me put it in a notepad. So there's one interesting aspect here. Okay, so now when it says reload if older than, okay, and you set it for 2 hours. So which means for every 2 hours, your data is going to refresh. Okay. Now at 8 o'clock, I have accessed the D page and my assume my data is refreshed. The first refresh happened at 8. Okay. Now when is the next refresh? When should it happen?
After 2 hours.
Okay, ideally at 10 o'clock, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then it should happen at 12, and then it should happen at 2. Likewise, it should continue. Yes.
Yes.
Now, at 8 o'clock, I have accessed my page, but again, I come back only the next day. So I come back the next day again at 8 o'clock. I did not access my D page on the previous day anymore. I just did it once, and after 24 hours, I came back again. So how many reloads do you think will happen?
At next 8 o'clock only it will happen when we are accessing it.
Right. Exactly. So all the 12 unnecessary reloads will not happen. So the system will not reload it just because you've mentioned 2 hours. No. Instead, what it will do is it will check for the next access. When is the next access happening? Yes, it is. If it is at 8 o'clock, it will check. Is the data stale? Is the data more than 2 hours old? If yes, only then it will reload the data. Okay. So it doesn't do all the 12 unnecessary reloads will not happen. Okay, it's not it is not reloaded until the next request for the page comes. Now for this scenario, assume you came back at 9 o'clock. Okay, 2 hours is your refresh time, but you came back at 9 o'clock. Now will the data be refreshed?
No.
No. Even though you're trying to access it, the system checks whether the data is more than 2 hours stale or not. No, there's just only 1 hour passed. So the system is not going to refresh it. Whatever previous data that you have on 8 o'clock, the one that you have on the clipboard, only that will be available even at 9. Okay? But at 10:01, now the data is going to refresh if I access it. If I access my data at 10:01, yes, the system is going to check. Yes, 2 hours has passed, and then it will refresh my D page. Clear with this?
Yes.
Okay. Now, yes, this choice, again, like I said, depends upon how frequently your data is being modified. Okay? In few scenarios relating to country codes, okay, you're showing the country codes on the screen to a user. Now, how often do you think it has to be refreshed? Around 150 country codes are there, assuming.
Not many times actually. Once the
Right?
person
So,
selects the country code, not change more than 1 or 2 times.
correct. So
One
the
time
country
maybe.
codes, as in whenever a new country is added or whenever there's a change on the code or country is being removed. So only in those scenarios I might need to change or refresh the D page, which is completely a conditional base, right? I don't even need time for it. I mean, it need not be a time bound one. It can be a conditional base. If a new record is added or if a country is removed, that's when I would like to refresh it. So it goes on the conditional base. Okay?
Yes.
So the same holds good for your list type. Whereas for savable, we have some extra things coming up regarding the save options. We'll talk about this during the DB updates anyways. Okay. So let us try to retrieve this data using a D page now.